Welcome to part 5 of the I Thrive marketing series presented by EyeCarePro. I'm EyeCarePro CEO Daniel Rostan. And this is supported by iDoc, ClearVision, Edge Pro, and EyeCarePro. Now, so far we've covered what kind of marketing and practice needs. We've covered social platforms and posting strategies, user and Google experience optimization, also known as SEO, and the secret source to most of your appointments, which is your Google My Business page. And now, in today's webinar, we'll get much simpler, sort of. We look at Google Ads. Now, what's simple about it? Well, to quote one of our senior marketing managers at EyeCarePro, Mark Wolf, he says about Google Ads, if you do it right, you put money in and you get a lot more money out. How can you not do it? So with that said, let's get started. Now, I always like to start a webinar by making sure that we're all on the same page. So Google Ads is a broad term. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So let's make it an exact match. There are 3 main types of Google Ads out there that everybody's referring to when they say Google Ads, also known as PPC, which is pay-per-click. They just use the terms interchangeably. I'll give you an example of the first 2, and we're not going to focus on video ads today because, well, you need to make a video to run the ads, and that's a showstopper for almost everybody watching this webinar right off the bat. So this is Search Network. This is the classic Google advertising that everybody thinks of. You know, you're doing a search in Google, and then you see ads pop up in the search results. Now you can see the ads right at the top. It says ad quite clearly. These ads are triggered by the user's searches. So it's really important to know your audience, which all of you certainly do. But remember, people are searching for terms that they know, not the technical terms that you might use. This is where we'll be focusing most of our attention on today's webinar, will be the Search Network. Then you have the display network. These are images. These are image ads that show up on websites. Google says that they have 2 million websites that participate in the display network, and that in theory, they can reach 90% of all internet users worldwide. I believe them. So in general, the purpose of these ads are to keep your brand front and center in the viewer's mind. Remember that they're not looking for an eye doctor right now, but soon they will. And when they do, they should think of you. Now, the display network is most famous for remarketing. How many times have we been to a website, and then another website, and we see the same ad following us around? That's a combination of remarketing and the display network. You went to the Hilton website, you're thinking of going to a show, and you're looking at hotels for Vision Expo, and now you're surfing the web, and then you check out the news or the COVID stats, and there's the Hilton ad following around. The only thing is that Google does not allow retargeting for anything medical related. So scratch that part off your Google ad strategy. You can't you use remarketing to target a patient appointments. You can target for product sales, but not for patient appointments. You can still use the search display network quite effectively, though. Before we discuss Google Ads, I recently held a webinar with Dr. Josiah Young from Opticare Vision, and I asked for his view as a practice owner on why a practice like his does Google Ads. Now, we've been working with Dr. Young for years, and he invests a lot of time and money into ensuring that his site ranks well on Google. Now, I know I've downplayed rankings in our previous SEO webinar, but just take a look. You can see his site is ranking really, really, really well for a ton of keywords, and he's getting lots and lots of local traffic. So you think to yourself, why should I bother running Google Ads? Now, in fact, his SEO investment has been paying off and translating into some really great results. 224 appointments through the website in January, with 2,000 visitors from Google and 400 phone calls. So, Dr. Young chose to run Google Ads with us for one of his locations, Fort Mitchell, actually. And here were his most recent results for January. For Fort Mitchell, for Google Ads, you can see lots of impressions in the Google Ads, 2,600 impressions. 34 appointments came out of the Google Ads at a cost of $24 per appointment. And on top of the SEO that Dr. Young shared with us that his practice was getting, he's getting all these Google Ads results. Now, Opticare has always been a big name in Cincinnati. First they had 3, then 5, then 7 practices, and they've got well-established patient bases in Cincinnati, but they recently purchased another location in northern Kentucky, a younger practice here in Fort Mitchell. And this is in an area that they were less well known in. So the new location was added in 2018. Now, it took a few years to start to emulate all the processes that Dr. Young had in place in the other locations. And by the end of 2020, it was now primed for growth. So anytime a practice, changes hands or doctors, whatever the case may be, there's going to be some patient attrition, and some patients just elect to go elsewhere when their doctor leaves. So Dr. Young knows that the service at Opticare is great and that patients love it now, but like we said in the marketing webinar up front, it doesn't help you to market that. you have to experience it. So in order to experience it, the patient first has to get in the door. So Dr. Young's goal in running Google Ads was to replace the patients that were being lost to attrition after the acquisition of the practice, and he was replacing them with new ones. So, there are always people looking for a new eye doctor out there, right? So in his case, Google Ads gave the Fort Mitchell location the muscle that he needed to bring in those new patients. Now that's effectively, that's the best use of Google Ads. You want new patients, you turn on Google Ads. If it's running well, which is the case for Fort Mitchell, and it certainly was, you get a new patient for life at $29 per patient with $1,000 spend. So that's pretty good. Now, I asked our senior PPC analyst, Jeff Magaki. This is not him, but he looks a bit like this stock photo. Jeff has 19,000 hours of PPC experience, and well above the necessary 10,000 hours needed to put PPC into your blood. And so I asked Jeff, what is an appropriate budget, a PPC budget for a practice to have? So when Jeff lets his clients know what their budget should be, he usually looks at two numbers to give a recommendation. The first is the minimum budget. That's the bare minimum that a practice needs to spend on Google per day to give Google enough data to work with. Now, this is not the per day budget. This 500 is the per month budget. Don't worry. Basically, Google needs to run enough ads for you each day to get enough results to learn what ads work and what ads don't work, and therefore what they should focus on. Because Google's keeping track of everything that it shows, and it's keeping stats. So in general, it's very hard to do that with less than $500 in ad spend a month. So that ends up being less than $20 in ad spend a day. So we do not advise that a practice goes below $20 in ad spend a day, because Google's not going to get enough data, and it's going to hurt your results. Think about it. The more ads that Google shows, the more data it's going to have to see which ads are performing better, which keywords are performing better, not only which ones get clicks, but which ones get conversions. And then Google can start to show those ads more for those specific keywords. Without enough spend, Google will likely end up showing poorer performing ads for longer, which will hurt your results. And then, of course, you have the maximum budget. How much is too much? We recommend that practices spend enough initially, at least to reach 20% of their maximum visibility. Now, you have to realize that not all traffic is created equally. Just like not every patient is going to buy glasses. It would be great to determine that up front, wouldn't it? And only get the patients that will buy glasses. Well, there are a lot of searches out there on the web which don't all want an eye exam, even though they're searching on what seem to be relevant terms. So by limiting the budget to a share of voice of 20%, you give Google the room to learn what traffic works for you. And then Google can better sift through all that seemingly relevant traffic, and deliver you the traffic that's actually most likely to convert based on what Google has seen in the past. So if that provides a good ROI at 20% visibility, then you can keep adding to the budget until you eventually see a declining return on your investment. But initially, the more you can add, the better. Now, next up, okay, budgeting is obviously key, but the next biggest question that everybody has is, what area should I target with my ads? Now, what's the ideal geo-target around the practice to run ads? Now, obviously, it depends a lot on location and many other factors, but typically geo-targeting can be done in a radius around the practice, as you can see here on the left, or by a zip code or city, as you can see on the right. Now, this is a map showing Dr. Young's Fort Mitchell location. That's his location in the middle of the map, and that's in Kentucky. Now, given our experience with Google Ads and the campaigns that we've run, we know that patients typically will not drive that far for an eye doctor for a new practice that they're going to for an eye exam. So the best thing to do is really to do hyper-local targeting of your Google Ads, meaning you should target a local area like a 1 to maximum 5 mile radius around your office, and even then that's too much. That's proven to be the best campaign results that we've seen. In most non-rural areas, there are many optometrists, and people won't necessarily drive past many other practices. They won't even click past many other practices to come to a new office. So at least we shouldn't assume that when running Google Ads, and therefore we should keep the radius pretty tight. When you're in a rural area, though, with less competition, you can extend the geo-target further because people are more willing to drive there as there aren't as many practices. So now we have a budget and a radius. We should actually get into the keywords. Now, I think most of you know how keywords work to drive Google Ads. You have to choose the keywords that you want your ads to show up for. Relatively simple. Now, you can see here keywords trigger ads, and that forms an ad group. And then you can have other keywords that trigger other ads, which form a group of their own. And putting those together, you have a campaign. Now, the question is, what keywords should you choose for your Google Ads campaign, and how should you modify them? So keywords like you see here on the right usually perform best when used in different match types with negative keywords. Just threw a lot of stuff at you, so hang on, I will explain. For example, on Dr. Young's account, if we use eye exam, which you can see on the right, number 4, with broad match, which you can see on the left as number 1, we would get searches for Wing Eye Care. Imagine it. Eye exam at Wing Eye Care, eye exam at Pearl Vision, free eye exam. All those would show up. Your ad would show up. Now, all those are competitors to Dr. Young, and they're pretty useless searches because the person is not searching for Dr. Young's office and doesn't want to go to Dr. Young's office, or they want a free eye exam, which we don't want anyhow. So the goal is to reduce those searches. You don't want to put eye exam broad match because not all those searches are going to generate appointments. So you don't want your ads to show up for those terms. So broad match will catch everything, too much actually. So the way to limit a broad match is to add what are called negative keywords. Negative keywords prevents your ad from showing up for those keywords when they're a waste of money. Negative keywords take a lot of time to manage, as you would want to keep weeding out bad traffic. So initially, Dr. Young would put in wing as a negative keyword. He doesn't want any ad to show up when it's got the word wing because the competitor is Wing Eye Care, or Pearl Vision. Well, you don't want it to show up there either, or the word free. Now you've started to limit your ads from showing up with negative keywords. Now, the other option is you're going to go with exact match, which means if people search for exactly this, then your ad will show up. Just exactly eye exam. You're definitely going to miss a lot of traffic, which often results in people spending very little of their money. You know, it's nice what you spent, but you spent so little, it's not going to get you anywhere. Exact match is better if you're advertising products. Let's say, for example, Ray-Ban sunglasses would be a good exact match term. Not that I advise you to run ads on Ray-Bans because you're going to get a lot of wasted traffic, but that's a good use of exact match. You can also run Google ads for specialty terms like ortho-K, scleral lenses, myopia management. Now, obviously, these are much higher revenue patients. Harder to target with Google ads. There's a lot lower volume, so you're going to have to get creative in how to target them because the keywords are not going to quite be there. So you can expect your conversion costs for these kinds of patients to be higher. For regular campaigns with enough attention, you should be able to see your conversions get your conversions for $30 or less, definitely. But for specialty keywords, you might see double or triple the conversion cost, which is still a great ROI for those patients. Specialty patients are definitely willing to travel further for an expert, so you can also increase the ad radius. So now, once your budget, your radius, your ads, and your keywords are all in place, how long does it take to actually ramp up and for all of it to start magically working to deliver patients? Now, we've seen that it takes about 3 months. This is what we've seen for Google to gather enough data that it can use to optimize the campaigns effectively. And during those 3 months, you should be testing new ad copy. You should be changing the bidding strategy. You should be adjusting keyword match types, adding negatives, and you should be generally trying to improve performance while at the same time Google is doing the same thing with its learning. Campaigns usually take about 7 days. Once you change something, it takes about 7 days for Google's algorithm to relearn from the adjustment that you just made. So usually after the 3rd month is when your campaign should begin hitting the target ROI. And it should just keep improving from there. In other words, do not give up after months 1 or 2. And don't turn off your Google ads because the results sucked in month 1 or 2. If you do pause your ads, if you turn them off, Google will unlearn everything that it just learned, and you have to start all over again with a fresh new 3 months. So that's a lot of money wasted. Now, here's a concept that might make your head spin just a little bit. If you've seen the past webinars in this series, particularly the first one, you'll know all about segmenting the marketing and targeting different patient types. You can do the same thing with a Google Ads calendar that hits each hotspot as the year goes on. Now, of course, we keep a steady focus of the ads on the core keywords, optometrist, eye doctor, eye exam, etc. But every 2 months, this is what we do at our end. We shift the topical keywords and ads to capture what's happening in the market. This is a pretty powerful approach that effectively will take your Google ads and turn it into a marketing tool because patients are now seeing relevant, timely content in your ads that's shifting as the year goes on. So this is an example of one of our yearly schedules. Each module is swappable. So, here's another example with totally different modules that we could run for a practice. And we basically have enough modules to suit any practice's needs. Now, I guess I should say, don't try this at home, folks. It does take a lot of work to manage this and get good results. Now, we have a team dedicated to it and are managing over 100 accounts. And even then, this is challenging, but it produces good results. So it's definitely something to aspire to. I think one of the most powerful things about Google Ads, you can see it here, it's like instant SEO. Basically, you can get yourself to the top of the search results, not even overnight, but the second you turn it on. SEO is great, and it can definitely help a practice a lot, but Google Ads can help a new practice or one that isn't ranking well, or shall I say performing well, or one that is ranking well and just wants more traffic. That's the beauty of Google Ads. To requote Mark Wolf, you put money in, and if your ads are doing well, you just get more money out. Now, one last point. Obviously, it's very, very important to track conversions. You got to pay attention to your ROI. I've seen a lot of practices out there that share their Google Ads data with us, and they're doing a great job of getting clicks at good prices. But there's just not so much clarity around what their cost is per patient that they're getting out of it. That's the actual conversion. You want to get your ROI, you need a conversion. So don't do Google Ads unless you have a real number in front of you that tracks the cost per conversion. And no, a phone call is not a conversion. Even a phone call over 1 minute is not a conversion. Sure, they called, but that doesn't mean they turned into a patient. That's what a lot of places consider to be a conversion, which is a phone call or a phone call over a minute. So you have to make sure that your PPC calls are all recorded and then listen to a sample of them every month, and you'll start to get a pretty good idea of what percentages are actually turning into appointments. This is the PPC report that we provide our clients with. You can see total appointments, how many from calls, how many from form fills, all the data that you should be looking at to see if your Google Ads are actually working for you. So whoever you're doing Google Ads with, you want to see the real conversion with real appointments. And if they need to listen to calls, they should listen to calls so that they can actually tell how many appointments you're really getting. So there are no shortcuts to successful Google Ads, despite what Google wants you to think, as you saw in part 4 of this webinar series with GMB ads. And as you can see, there's a lot of work to be done to get the ads up and running. And once they're up and running, you should expect your ROI to stabilize at the 3-month mark. Stopping earlier is a big waste of money. And once your ads stabilize, remember, the optimization does not end. There's still improvements to be made. You can keep adding more keywords. You can try out more ads. You can branch into new specialties, or like we do at EyeCarePro, you can regularly target different hot topics as the year goes on. It literally never ends. And the more you do, you can expect to lower your cost per patient. For regular patients, you can reasonably expect $30 a patient or less, but there are definite possibilities of getting lower and lower and lower below that number. For specialty patients, as I said, you're going to expect a higher cost per conversion. Don't forget to track and see your actual conversion results, not just clicks or phone calls. And above all, I think you should keep the following in mind. If you see an Essilor ad, a Luxottica, a LensCraft, or a Pearl, America's Best, you name the ads in your area, Google Ads is an equalizer. You might not be able to do it yourself, but somebody can do it for you, and you can get straight to the top of those ads. I'm talking straight to the top. Big companies mean nothing in this space other than they have big budgets, but trust me, Google is happy to take your money too. They do not discriminate. So with that said, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you online.